Hello, this is Dread from Epic Builds. In today's video, we will go over Void Fire Aura Spellblade, one of the most complicated builds I've ever created. Before we move on to the video, if you're enjoying the content, I'd suggest liking and commenting on the video, as that's the best way of telling YouTube that I'm doing a good job. So the overall concept of this build is to utilize Dark Shroud of Cinders in combination with two Blades of the Forgotten Night. This does two things. The blades force our spells damaged into void, as they both have 50 flat spell void on them, and Shroud gives us 50% increased void damage per fire aura. This puts us well over 1000% increased void damage when fully stacked, giving us increased damage per fire aura source we stack, giving us a lot of damage. We then run a Fractured Crown, which allows us to take 50% of our damage towards our mana, allowing us to be tanky enough to take on endgame. We gain our mana back thanks to Mana Strike, as we want something to crit as well, so we can proc our on-crit fire aura idols. A big buff overall to this build that makes it possible was the buff to atrophies. In patch 8.3, this patch, atrophies had a line of text added to it, 25% penetration for damage over time. This, on top of Void Pen on our amulet, is 34% pen overall, and with our Void Shred combined, it turns into 74% pen/shred, which is much more than before. The main issue I have with this build overall is, since we're forced to run double Blade of the Forgotten Night, we take 15% increased damage taken while dual wielding, while also not being able to run a Bastion of Honor, one of the best pieces of Spellblade support in the game right now. A secondary issue is the lack of more damage sources, as the only one is inside Flame Ward and it's only 15%. The fact that we're able to run empowered monolith bosses with decent damage surprises me heavily. In the end, I believe Lightning Aura has a much more balanced approach, which I will be uh, working on later, as it can utilize Bastion while we can't, but this version definitely has more damage. Now, overall, I enjoyed the build. It has, like I said, a few issues. The main issues, like I said, is uses a lot of uniques, but is a very cool way of playing Fire Aura. As, like I said, as you scale Fire Auras, you also scale your increased damage. So the more Fire Auras you have, which I get up to like 20/30 thanks to Surge, it does plenty of damage for single target, or at least acceptable amounts considering that we're kind of tanky. We're kind of like in between tanky and not tanky, as that's kind of just how mages work overall, thanks to how Flame Ward works. So whenever your Flame Ward is up, you are one of the tankiest builds in the entire game. But when you don't have Flame Ward up, you're squishy as all hell. And that's kind of just how Mage works right now. Now we could have ran the conversion setup where we run a Ashen Crown to turn our fire into, our physical into fire, and then we could run a Prism Wraps, which will make it so you take 30% less elemental damage, and on top of that, if you have an Orion's Eye, you could run that as well for 15% less fire damage taken, and makes your void damage get converted to fire damage, at least taken. But the issue is, since we're forced to run our chest, the void damage one, the Dark Shrouds, we can't actually sacrifice that, as that's all of our damage. That's another reason why the lightning version is better. But like I said, I think this one has its neat quirks. Also, the ability to choose whatever fire aura you want instead of being forced into the one that's the most cancerous, i.e. the lightning one, is pretty neat, as the cold fire aura is much less screen hoggy. I can actually see what I'm doing. But yeah, after that, let's get in the game, shall we? All right, here we are in game with the build here. So just as a disclaimer, we are going to go heavy into how to farm all of these uniques, including how to craft a Fractured Crown for yourself. And if you want to just skip to where I talk about the skills and stuff, there will be timestamps in the description. But if you want to figure out how to actually farm all these uniques, if you don't have them, then please stay tuned. So the first unique we're going to show is the Fractured Crown, as that's actually the easiest thing to get. So what you want to do is you want to go to the Gambler, and then you want to go to Armor. Make sure that you're of level to get the Fractured Crown, which is level 72, right? And you're going to look for a Gilded Crown. So we're going to type in Gilded here. Now we're going to grab a Gilded Crown. Now it's going to roll magic. Now here, you see how the instability is 2? What we're going to do is we're going to raise affixes to tier 4, not to tier 5. Leave the T5 alone, but then go to T4, T4. See how I'm adding 5 instability per time with Glyph of the Guardian? You always want to use Glyphs of the Guardian, right? And then we're going to grab another one. We're going to put another one on, and then another one on, and that one did not go because it fractured, which is fine. This will take a few times to do it. Make sure you have the materials and the gold. This is actually a perfect example of crafting from white, actually, because that's the easiest way. So we're going to do mana. We're just going to do bam. You always want Glyphs of the Guardian, so it's always 5 instability each. That fractured. So like I said, this is going to take a while. It does take a while sometimes. So I'm actually going to fracture this one because I want the Fireball Pierce chance. And then we're going to keep refreshing. As you can tell, they're pretty common on a mage. I would heavily suggest doing it on a mage and not on a different character. Now, as you can tell on this character, we have T5 Necrotic Res, but the instability is 8. But what we can do is we can use a Rune of Cleansing, which will keep 7, and then wipe it. So that because if you did not know, as you add mods to an item, the higher the tier of the mod, the lower chance you have of finishing that, right? So we're going to add even more. Trying to find one I have a bunch of, like this Dexterity. There you go. Now, we want to get up to 40, and there's a reason for that. So we're going to do this. There you go. Now we're at 42. The reason why we're trying to get to 42 instability without fracturing anything, because if I try to turn this T4 to T5 while not using a Glyph of the Guardian means a 17% chance of destructive fracture. Now, if this turns into a destructive fracture, we will get a Fractured Crown. So we're just going to try to upgrade. And there you go. That is how you get a Fractured Crown. Now, for the other, also, that rolled really fucking shittily. I got a really good one. Wow. Makes me realize how good of a one I got. All right, so for the other items. So for the Blades of the Forgotten Knight, what you're going to do is you're going to go to Reign of Dragons. I would heavily suggest doing all of this farming in empowered monoliths. I wouldn't try farming it here. So you're going to have to find a different build to play until, obviously, you get to this character. So I would suggest doing that beforehand. But just suggest doing all the farming beforehand. So in this timeline, Echoes can have rewards that grant unique or set melee weapons, swords, axes, maces, daggers, or polearms. So here we have swords, right? So we're going to go here and we're going to find an Echo that has swords. And you're just going to keep doing that. You're going to reset the Echo, keep doing it. And eventually you will drop enough swords to get both of them, right? And then after that, to farm these 2 last uniques, so Siphons of Anguish are very common on Oribus. You'll get a bunch of them. This is not a problem. You'll get plenty of Siphons of Anguish as you kill Oribus. But for these specifically, for the Dark Shroud and for Atrophies, so Atrophies is a common 50-50 drop between Dark Shroud of Cinders and Atrophy. So if you just farm either normal or empowered Rai, you can get these very quickly. Now, the issue with Dark Shroud is the roll on the increased damage is so far, like from 30 to 50, that you really, really want a really well-rolled one, like at least 40% or more. So you might have to farm Rai just a little bit more. But yeah, that's pretty much how to get all the uniques. Now, let's talk about skills, shall we? All right, time to talk about skills. So for the first skill, we're going to talk about Surge, as this is the most important one. So we take 1 point travel into Jolt, 5 point travel into Dormant Stacks, Storm Battery. This is very important for later. 1 point travel into Insulation. This doesn't do anything for us as we are running a Fractured Crown and we do not have any ward. And we grab 4 points into Fulmination. So you have a chance to cast Fire Aura when you consume a stack of Dormant Energy. So the way this works is when Surge is on cooldown and I hit an enemy, right, I will get a stack of dormant energy. Now this will stay with me until I use Surge and actually it's only for 4 seconds. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's only for 4 seconds. And then you use it and then you get 10 fire auras, right? And that's how we scale our single target. Is what we do is we hack the target, and Surge. Now you can only do it while it's off cooldown, meaning that you kind of have to spam Surge to make sure that you're able to do so, which is one of the important things about it. So you're just going to attack, Surge, attack, make sure you get those stacks up, and then Surge and attack and Surge. So it's kind of like that same kind of combo. Since the Fire Aura is doing all the damage for you, you have the time to do this anyways. And then we take 2 points travel into Shocking Blows, 2 points travel into Lightning Rush, then 1 point into Shielding Advance. It makes it so that we can like run through AoEs with our with of course with our Surge, which is nice. Then we grab 1 point into Stormbringer. It makes it so it casts Lightning Bolt, and then 3 points in Electro Pulse. It makes it so we cast 4 Lightning Bolts in total, and there's a reason why for later. We'll explain. Now for Mana Strike, we take 4 points into Swift Stamp. We want to be attacking as fast as possible because there's a node inside Spellblade. The Inferno node makes it so 20% chance on hit that it'll give us a fire aura. So we want to be attacking as fast as possible for that to work. And we add 3 points into Sprite Blade. We want a little bit of AoE, so we actually hit everything in front of us. 4 points into Mana Drain, so that the base mana that Mana Strike gives us increased mana. It does not affect the critical mana, but it does affect all this. We take 5 points into critical mana. This will be per enemy crit, meaning if I crit 5 enemies, I'll get like 75 mana. That is a very distinct distinction between the two types of mana from Mana Strike. Then 1 point into Critical Rejuvenation. It gives us a bunch of crit chance, base crit chance. We have no critical strike multiplier for Mana Strike, which is fine because we're not dealing damage with Mana Strike. And then 1 point into Celestial Precision gives us even more base crit. So we have to run just a very small amount. So we're always critting with Mana Strike, meaning that we're always trying to proc our Fire Aura on crit, which I'm not running because I needed more resistance for what I was doing. But yeah, later on you'll want the Fire Aura on crit. And that's pretty much it for Mana Strike. We do take 1 point travel to Arcanist Blade and then 1 point to Mana Storm. This is just to give us extra hits for a Void Shred, as you want to be hitting as much as possible to shred resistance, as that's one of our main ways of dealing damage is Void Shred. Then for Flame Ward, this is your stereotypical Flame Ward tree. The only thing we do different is we go down here, grab Fire Aura, right? So whenever we actually use Flame Ward, we get a Fire Aura, which is really cool. Then we take 1 point into Eye of Flame. Fire Aura does 15% more damage. This applies to all of our fire auras, which is really nice. This is the only thing that actually affects our fire auras, which is sad, other than what's inside the Spellblade tree. I wish there was just a little bit more. If I could put extra points into this, I don't know why it's just a 1-pointer, but whatever, just weird. Then for Lightning Blast, we're doing a very specific setup for Lightning Blast. So we're trying to grab. So main thing is we're actually using it for Lightning Attunement, meaning whenever we use our Surge, we have a chance of getting lightning aegis around us. That gives us 25% DR for a few seconds, and also makes us, if we lose 25% of our health, it'll explode, which is just another amount of DR, which is really nice, right? Then, of course, we grab 1 chain here. Why do we do that? And why are we grabbing 4 points to Arcing Power? Because it got nerfed. It doesn't work for triggered casts of Lightning Blast. But the reason why we're grabbing this specifically is so that when we grab Closed Circuit, it actually gives us the increased damage. So what happens is all 4 of the Lightning Blasts will go out to a target and then chain back to us, giving us 60% increased damage. I know that doesn't sound like much, but sadly with this kind of build, the amount, like you need as much increased damage as possible, as you don't have any more damage to build into. So you want as much increased damage as possible because, like I said, no more damage exists other than that one node. So you have to stack something else. And of course, chain range makes it so the range on the chain is higher than just damage. Doesn't really matter what else you put into it, like shock chance. It really doesn't matter. You just mainly need closed circuit plus lightning attunement. Then for our Enchant Weapon, so there's not really much to say about this except for the fact it gives us attack speed, makes it so we zap. So the reason why we want to zap is so that we have extra chances to apply Void Shred. That's pretty much it, because nothing else really helps us at all, really. The cleanse is nice, but that's really it. And then of course duration. That's really it for this. Like nothing else. It's just because we have nothing else to run here, right? All right, and then let's get into the passives, shall we? So for the passives here, we take 8 points into Scholar because we want the HP and the mana. 2 points travel to Arcanist. 5 points into Mage for the attack speed as we want as much attack speed as possible. 5 points into Knowledge of Destruction because we want the crit. Just a little bit of crit chance to cap our crit on our Mana Strike. Crit multi does nothing for us for the Sorcerer Tree. I'm going to be grabbing 8 points in Brainstorm, then 8 points into Mana Shell, then as many points as I can into Wisdom, as we want as much flat mana as possible. A little bit of mana regen is nice, and of course increased spell damage does apply to our fire auras because they are spells. Now we take 6 points travel into Elemental Affinity. That increased elemental damage does nothing for us, but the increased elemental resistance is nice. 8 points into Flamewalker makes it so we have fire aura chance per second, and it's doubled if we have no active fire aura, and it is always up as long as we're attacking something or if we're moving, which is nice. So it makes it so we get extra fire auras, which is extra increased damage. Then 8 points into Incinerating Aura. It does give you a bunch of base damage for Fire Aura, which is neat, but it doesn't really help us in this case. It gives us a lot of increased area, which is very helpful. As you can tell, my area on Fire Aura is huge in comparison to normal, which is really nice. Allows you to clear the screen much quicker. I take 1 point into Freezing Aura so that I can turn it into cold. You can turn it into lightning or keep it fire. It's really up to you. The only reason I'm keeping it cold is so that I can actually see what's going on screen. Like I'll show you actually how screen cluttered it gets in comparison. So this doesn't get screen cluttery at all, like at all. Like in comparison, like I can actually see what's going on, right? And I can actually see where the aura ends and where it doesn't end. So that's the main reason why I'm keeping it cold with a 1 pointer here. Then we take 7 points into Fire Blood for Vitality because we want as much HP as possible. 5 points in Arcane Shielding for the DR. 1 point into Shattered Aegis so that we can stack it 4 times so it gets up to 12% DR because we're going to be attacking a lot with Mana Strike, so it's just extra DR for free. 5 points into melee attack speed. The ward does nothing for us. We just want the melee attack speed. 5 points into Mana Reaver gives us flat mana and some chance to gain mana back, which is cool for when we get hit really hard, because as you can tell, we are mom. 1 point into Gemini so we can dual wield the swords. 5 points into Inferno so we have extra fire aura chance. Then we take 10 points into Outlast for the HP and the damage over time, because like I said, you want as much increased damage as possible because you have no more damage sources, so you have to compensate somewhere. And that's pretty much it for the tree. Like I said, for the rest of the points, Brainstorm, Wisdom, and Mana Shell, and that's it. All right, for the gearing. So my idols are kind of a mess. It's partly because I'm trying to cap my resistances while trying to utilize all these uniques. You could probably dump one Doom Ring and use resistance. You could dump yeah, that's pretty much it. You can dump the atrophies if you're doing plenty of damage if you feel, but mainly you want these four. You technically don't need a fractured crown, but it's more of a you might as well have a fractured crown kind of thing because otherwise you're going to be very, very squishy. And like I said, as you saw there, it took me like a minute to make a fractured crown, which is like really easy. Now, for idols, you want fire aura damage. You have enough AoE, you want damage. Increase fire aura damage. You want 4 of these, and then of course you'll have like 4 hybrid idols. That's pretty much what your setup's going to be. Or you can run 1 or 2 of these chance to get fire aura on crit. Yep, this one. Now, I'll be honest, it's hard to tell if these are working or not. They are, but like it's hard to tell if it's worth it or not. Like it's really hard to tell because of the randomness of fire auras. So that'll be more of what you can judge. Like if you feel like as though you have enough HP, feel like as though you're tanky enough, you could run them instead of the hybrid HP idols. But for now, we're just running HP idols, and I'm just running some resistance idols to cap out my resistance. But yeah, That's pretty much it for items. Like I said, the required unique fracture crown, so we go mom. Makes it so we can't have ward, which is kind of sad, but it gives us mom, so we're tanky. Uh, Double Blade of the Forgotten Knight. The main stats here is the spell void damage, as that allows us to turn our our fire auras into void damage. Pretty much doesn't convert the actual spell into void, which is sad because otherwise we could use adaptive damage, but it's good enough. Then for Dark Shroud of Cinders, of course, this is the item that makes the whole build work. Without this, we'd have no way of scaling increased damage, and it would suck very hard. Now, I am running double Doom Ring. Why am I running that? Because since Void Shred, I can show you, Void Shred shares the same spot as Spell Damage Leech's Life, which is not here. Here it is. Hunger of the Void. This is Spell Damage Leech's Life. It shares a spot with Void Shred. And that's very bad for us, as we would want Spell Damage Leech's Life because we are doing spells, right? Well, we can actually just run Siphons of Anguish and use the Void Damage Leech's health. Gives us movement speed, gives us Doom, which is an extra dot, which does get scaled by our increased damage from Dark Shroud. So it's all in all just extra damage and extra leech, which is really nice, and movement speed as well and resistance. So I would suggest running double Doom Ring. You could probably get away with running one, but I was just running two because I wanted to see how it felt. Then for the belt, like cleanse, mana, you want a little bit of mana regen to help you keep up with taking damage. That could easily be void damage though. Then of course HP. For the amulet, you want void pen, void damage or damage over time. Then cap out your resistances and get some frailty with your those suffixes. Then for the tomb, warding tomb is your best in slot because it gives you flat mana, but you could use technically anything technically, and then you get the damage over time, and then you get double resistances. For that last prefix, you could probably put mana. Then, like I said, atrophy. Atrophy is the least important thing of the build. It could be cut technically, but like I wouldn't cut it myself as it gives us a lot of damage. And of course, the boots is just movement speed, HP, crit avoidance, and then you're going to get crit avoidance from dragon, and then you're going to get endurance percentage from shamans. And that's pretty much it for the gearing. With that being said, thank you all for coming around and watching. Have a wonderful rest of your day wherever you're at, and bye.